Hi, thanks for joining me.
Hi, thank you.
So you're in Colorado, right?
Yeah, I live in Littleton.
Nice.
Yeah. Sorry about the time change.
Oh, that's okay. It actually didn't even show up on my calendar. I'm having some technology issues, but I'm glad I caught it. So, it's a beautiful day here. So I wasn't waiting. I was just here in the moment. So,
Good.
um, so what do you want to talk about? Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
Um, Gosh, kind of whatever. I did send you that email just because that one video the one interview that you did with Adam was really like clicking to me. Um, and I don't really have a lot of outlet for that kind of thing. So I appreciate you taking the time to look into that.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm kind of just open to whatever.
Okay. Well, is this the let's get right to the heart of what what resonated with you the most. The demon possession, the idea of a possessed aura, the idea of um, uh, the spirit of 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 ourselves kind of being trapped in the aura. But what do you think?
um, it was kind of all that. So I've been studying human design, and in that system, they have this idea that there's you're the vehicle, your foreman's vehicle, and you have room for one passenger. And growing up in a Christian home, that passenger is Jesus. you know, Essentially that's who's driving. So it's interesting to me to hear other people kind of talk about, somebody else taking that seat and the kinds of things that open you up for that. Because I guess the way that I grew up, it's like you basically let it in, and that seems to be more like a factual statement rather than oh you let that in, So it's intriguing to me how those things feel invited. What are the cues? What exactly is it that makes me say, okay, cool, you said I can drive, because I think I was telling you some of my experiences. I'm like, I never said you could drive. That was not something I agreed to. So what was it, that had I had some tail fear, how did that, so that's intriguing to me. I have no idea. So especially when it comes to, I think that alcoholism was intriguing because that's something that is like very feared in my family. My dad's side has a history. My mom's just not about it. So when I started drinking, I tried to be very conscious. I tried to say, okay, check in with myself. Is this really how I would act in this situation? Is this really, take a breather? And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to have a good time. This is totally what I would want to do. So somewhere in there, those catalysts. So
Um, Sorry, there's a really large truck. I don't know if you can hear that right now, but there's like a really loud truck that is is pulled up right outside my house. He's gathering. I've been hearing you, but I've been keeping myself on mute because I didn't want to corrupt. Oh, good. He's backing away right now. Um,
good.
Man, he's so loud. It's just so loud. Um, so all that is fascinating. The the consent thing, it makes me think about how when you're a baby in the womb, you are inside of your mother's aura. So you are in a sense you're protected by that. You are inside that shell. So the baby doesn't have to have its own aura, its own protection standpoint. Um, but then as it's born, in fact, part of the birthing process, there'd have to be some sort of in fact, maybe even cutting the umbilical is what seals the baby's aura, like creates that auric shell. You know, the moment that that cord is cut, that shell's allowed to form. And there's an old ceremony that we don't do anymore, but it was you would place the newborn on the ground. You would allow it to ground, basically. So like a Native American culture, you might place its foot directly into the soil as soon as it's born. Other cultures, they literally would just place them on the ground and let them be on the ground for a moment. Now, a lot of modern technology tells us that there's something called electrons. Whether or not that's true, you know, we'll see. But the idea is that through grounding, all those negative electrons are rushing into the body, and that could be the mechanism for this auric field. All that to go back to what you were talking about how we invite things in. It would seem like it wouldn't be through language. It wouldn't be through something as complicated as language or linear or temporal like that. I mean, that's a lot of overhead. We need an endocrine system to speak language to each other, because so much of it is emotions and adrenaline and, you know, chemicals and all the other stuff. So it's something much simpler. And it seems like there's a core essence of consent that is plasma, like a consent plasma, an auric field of consent that we all have. And so when you drink, that auric field is permeable. You know, when you drink in excess, I should say, when you do anything in excess. If you run a marathon, I ran a marathon only once, and it was like really, really hard. And I wasn't well for several days, you know, like fully recovered, and just from that experience. And so much of that rings true that you can, okay, here, perfect example. I worked in a wilderness camp, and one of my kids, was like young teenager. He was asleep on the table, like he had fallen asleep on a table like this, and someone took his dread, or it accidentally happened, but probably someone took his dreadlock and dipped it in a glass of acid, of LSD.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, not battery acid, but like LSD. And so the LSD wicked up his hair, you know, just as an oil lamp would, and went directly into his brain. Now that kid was gone. Like when he got to me, he was already gone. So I don't know what he was like before. All I know is what his parents were like, what his parents told me. And his parents were like, this kid's fucked. Like I don't mean he's sick. Like he's fucked. Like we can't have him at our house. We don't want him at our house. We don't know what to do. This kid's not who he is. He's not. And he was a different kid. All that to go back to this idea that all these things are invited in through us aurically opening ourselves to them. And so when I was young, I was told that if you don't want to burn in hell, you need to ask Jesus into your heart, and you need to do that, and you should do that. And so I was told that not by my parents, but by the church, or it could have been a summer camp. I honestly can't remember. All I remember is being in the hallway and doing that and asking Jesus into my heart. And I felt something. I felt different. Something came, the Holy Spirit, as they say, came into me, and I felt that. And I remember telling my mom, hey, I asked Jesus into my heart and I felt something. And she didn't say this, but she looked at me queer, like, wait, you felt something? What are you talking about? You know, and she was doing something else, I'm sure, and just kept doing it. It wasn't, she didn't miss a beat. We weren't going to have this conversation, you know. Not to say she was closed off to it, but and maybe I made that up, but I felt like as a kid, I was like, my mom didn't understand that. Like, I just told her something happened, and she didn't, like, she should have stopped and been like, holy shit, yeah, I remember when I was 6 and, you know, and I did that and a fucking butterfly came, you know, whatever. I didn't get that reaction. This was supposed to be more of a bigger deal than that.
Mm-hmm.
All those instances, even though I said, I asked Jesus into my heart. What was really happening is when they were telling me you need to accept Jesus in your heart, they were emotionally showing my auric field how to open to that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
by your opening to that, that in a sense is this pranic consent that I was talking about earlier. This idea that we have consent energy maybe that goes into it. I'm sorry, this is like really complex what I'm talking about, but I wonder if what you think about that, like, you know, it's all about consent basically. It doesn't require language. It doesn't require religion. It doesn't require anything official. It's just pure consent based.
I would actually agree that it's more of an energetic consent, you know, because I mean, really, if you're aware enough of your own spirit and your own body, if you know, you really can do all those things, I think. Because if I really think hard about it, it would have to be an energetic consent. Because I never sat in here and, you know, asked, I think I told you my email, my sisters and I all had the experience of someone, like an entity smothering us. None of us asked for that. You know, there were certain spiritual existences, certain encounters that I never asked for. And I wonder, you know, if some of the things that we were emotionally going through were kind of an invitation. Because I mean, I grew up, I mean, emo kid, you know. Somebody needs to understand me. Somebody must feel this pain. And so if it's not going to come from another source, then I'm sitting in that energy, you know, and I'm just, I have to feel it. You know, this music, they get it. So I'm listening. I'm just, you know, harvesting that almost. So, you know, sometimes I wonder, you know, is that enough to just be like, yeah, come sit with me. I'm going to just fester in this and I'm not alone.
Yeah.
You know? So,
Man.
I mean, that makes total sense. And yeah, when you're little, I think when I was 2, I was asked if I wanted Jesus to come into my heart. And my dad said my face was lit up. You know, like I met the Holy Spirit really young.
Wow.
So, you know, and as amazing as that might sound and would have been for them, I think it also kept me from some of the dogma. I couldn't buy some of the stories because I had an encounter with truth at an early age. Like I already energetically felt what was right and what was not. But as a kid, you can't say any of that. So you can't articulate it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that makes sense.
Actually, it does. It really rings true. In fact, a couple things did. The music part, the emu music, goth music, the punk music, even the super codependent soft rock, like that's really what I was exposed to all the time. Of just like,
Mm-hmm.
so love means I'm supposed to be a river that cracks the dam, that destroys all the wildlife and the innocent bunnies, and that unless I find you again, I'm going to be burning in an endless fire of emotional drowning. And it's like, yep, that's pretty much how you need to act. And I bought into that. Like, you know, I bought the costume. I did all of that. And I freaked out my girlfriends, like in high school. Like they were just like, dude, you were way too intense. And I saw that right away. I was like, oh shit, I'm sorry. I was just really getting into this. You know, it's no different than when I go snowboarding, or if I play guitar, or if I draw, or if I write. It's just, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. You know, let's be codependent. Let's let's have that. But all this to come back to the emotional state that we have through music makes so much sense, Rachel, that would be the opening. Like if you were to play a punk band, then just as I'm making this up, but just as an example, your aura over the back of your head would open up this way, and it would open in a square pattern. So any kind of spirit that could enter that has that shape, any kind of ethereal. I mean, I don't even want to call it a spirit. I want to call it an ethereal, because it we don't have to even go that far down the plank, you know. Some kind of ethereal, some kind of non-physical vibration could enter through the slot that we open through our emotions. So if one's very angry, a lot of times they say that you feel a lot of aura off your head when you're angry. There's a lot of red focus up top, where love is more centered, you know, in the center. So all these auric field changes that we have are basically opening up these different holes, and these holes are really the invitation. That's really all it takes. That hole is actually a vortex, which is interesting because that's how your lungs work. Your lungs only pull in oxygen after they've completely expunged, after they've created that vortex where when you let go, okay, now it's going to come back. So it's the same kind of thing, and that would be a nice universal way to have consent through energy, because now every particle in the universe can have consent because it's energetically given. And we see the same thing in the animal kingdom. One who's dropped his guard, the weakest among us. I know this sounds cruel, but it's just the one that's willing to be captured is the one that's giving consent energetically to that. I know that I'm probably gonna get all kinds of comments now. I'm condoning violence. I'm not. I'm just trying to explain how this consent works on all these different scales. You know, humanity has such a bigger dimension to them that we can have these other berries of emotion, you know, the emotional consent. But an ant or even certain birds, they don't have those depths. So the consent shows itself in much simpler ways. That's a mouthful there.
No, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. Because they can't give that. And in order for their entire system to work, there has to be some sort of open door for that.
Yep.
Because I don't believe that, you know, animals are malicious in their intent to survive. So, you know, whatever you want to call God, I mean, you know, there has to be a plan. There has to be some sort of like, yeah, okay, I'm going to be the sacrifice today.
Yeah,
I'm going to be.
Yeah, basically.
I'm good.
Well, in a way, consent is kind of its own gravity, like it's three-dimensional gravity, because it's causing the chemical reaction. Oil and water have no consent for each other. You know, you can shake them up, but if you give it enough time, they will show, well, I have no consent for you. Yeah, I have no consent for you, and they separate. You know, so that might be a good analogy of looking at this. Now, you and your sister both had, in case anyone hasn't heard, wants to know more about the email, both of you had like suffocation, like attacks, right? Etheric attacks. Can you go into those anymore?
It didn't happen a lot. That was the funny thing about it. Like for all, it was just strange because, you know, everything in my house is the word. It's about Christ. You know, we've got the music, and you know, the spirit is here. So it was really odd for both of us to have these experiences at different times. You know, it didn't happen right away. It wasn't like boom, boom, boom. It was just like, oh, hey, did this happen? Yeah, this was weird. And we have rooms that were next to each other. So it was like, I think when it happened to me, I was sleeping on my stomach and I felt somebody's hand like pushing me into the pillow, like just like trying to smother me. And I don't know, I must be an asshole or something, because I woke up and was like, I don't think so, and just went back to sleep. You know, some people would freak out, and I know my sister, she said she started praying. She's like, I'm praying in tongues, I'm using the name of Jesus, and she said all I could hear was these other things just laughing at me. You know, so she had a totally different experience, different response. You know, I was laughing with my little brother. I'm like, you know how cats will sleep with their backs to you as a sign of trust? You know, animals would do that. They're like, I totally trust you. Well, I started sleeping with my back to the door just to be like, screw you, I don't care you're here.
That's awesome. That's
awesome. You know, but I don't know that, I think that was, you know, just kind of a silly thing because it didn't really stop those things from happening. I think I told you, like, later on, I had several experiences where I moved into this house, and I just felt somebody right next to my bed, and just like, I'm not touching you, like this, like teasing, sort of like, oh, I'm here. I might not be trying to kill you, but I'm here. So just really this odd just presence. And I don't know, I've wondered if it's something that was just part of the house. I don't know if it followed one of us home, who knows? But, that was just kind of some of those things. It never tried it again. It didn't mess with my sister again. It's like it was just a singular instance. And I don't know if both my sisters encountered it. I think they did, but I know the one did for sure.
How are they now? How are they now? Are they doing well in life? Are they adjusted good? Does this stuff, any kind of symptoms show itself right now?
It's interesting. I haven't thought about that. Aside from stuff that I would say, like, as an older sister, like dealing with my own inner stuff, aside from like, hey, I could see where, they need to do some healing. It's hard to say, because the one who experienced it the most, and she and I brought it up to her because I bought some sage, and she was laughing, and I was like, look, do you remember that time? And she's like, oh man, yeah, I do. She's always been kind of a pill, so it's hard to tell. But I know that her inner dialogue isn't always the greatest.
Yeah.
That's a conversation my mom and I have often, is, she needs to change her words. She's always shooting herself in the foot. Something about everything all the good stuff isn't clicking.
Yeah.
So, could there be something, kind of blocking that frequency? Sure.
Yeah. Cause if it's inside her auric field, she feels the conflict of something that doesn't belong to her, but she doesn't know. She has no idea of the science. So up above the prana economy, we talk to ourselves, and we have a negative interaction with ourselves. And that's actually our auric field defending itself. It's trying to say, this doesn't belong here. This doesn't belong here, and it's going to fight back, saying, you suck, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do. Da, 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 da. Meanwhile, we're taught to go out. Let's just say, as an example, it's alcohol that, and this is really just one of many examples, but alcohol, it's obvious because we're told to accept the alcoholic inside of ourselves. So we're told, this alcohol spirit and you are the same. You are the same person. So we are taught to embrace ourselves. We're taught to, oh, well, I have to accept who I am, and accept the things that I cannot change, and change the things that I can, because I am a whole person. And therefore, I am this passenger. I am this sidekick. This sidekick is me. When we're not allowed to exercise the science of necromancy, we're not allowed to even look through our belief system, is what I'm talking about. I'm not implying there's a policeman that comes in, but our beliefs are never taught to consider that we could have a passenger inside of our auric field. And that's why we don't understand that it's a foreign entity. And that's why alcoholics that go through the program don't actually cure. It's a lifelong fight of accepting, yeah, I have this fucking roommate that pees in the corner and yells at my cat every day, and I have to accept that he's my roommate. And no matter where I live, that he's fucking there. So I have to give him room and board. And that's insane. No one has the willpower to do that the rest of their lives. No one would want to. And we're not taught to necromancy. We're not taught. This is why it's so amazing to look at how many verses in the Bible are about Jesus freaking pulling demons out of people. Like, yeah. I can't even count how many. It's well over 20. And I'm only talking about the ones that are really obvious. Like, if you look at all the different implications of spirit or the tongues or anything they're talking about. It says a lot more, but it's always him coming up to a dude going, yeah, Rachel,
Get
you've
out.
got a demon in there. I need that fucker to get out because I want to talk to Rachel right now. And it's just pure necromancy. He was a necromancer, and people hear that as an insult, but it's not. Like, what if this is all it takes? What if all it takes is just for us just to listen to our ancestors, all the Native American stories, all the Sanskrit stories, all the Sumerian stories, all of these stories? What if we just listen to those and go, okay, so we have some kind of auric field, we have the ability to invite people into it, and we have the ability to expunge them. And I was having this talk with someone else, and it blew me away because I thought about all of a sudden, this is why Jesus washes the feet. He washes the feet because when I wash, if I was talking to my friend Beth, and she was having this kind of like possession, and I was thinking, if I was there in the room with her, I would wash her feet. It sounds insane. Like it sounds like I have a Jesus complex, but I swear I think it works. So I'm still willing to have people accuse me of that and still say this because if I was to wash her feet, it would show her how much she's abandoned her own basement. Like it would show her that, wait a minute, there is a space inside of my body that I have not been inside of for a long time. And just me doing that makes you aware. It's no different than when my mom comes to visit me, the most amazing thing happens. My house becomes a spotless gallery for her to visit. It's something that I would never give myself. I only give myself that through her coming over. And it's always such a blessing. And when she leaves for weeks, I'm a different person. I'm glowing because of how clean my house is. The washing of the feet is the exact same thing, but it's for our own auric body. It's for our own field. We have this ability. And so that's really what necromancy is. It's simply understanding that there's something inside of you that actually is foreign, A, and B, you have sovereignty over your body, which means that all you have to do is emotionally feel uncomfortable with them being there. And by understanding, by disassociating, which is such a backwards term for me because I've always pushed against disassociation, but in this way you can use it as a positive tool. You disassociate from that ghoul, from that demon, from that haunt, codependency from all the love songs, anger through the angst and strife, emotional neglect through emu, through just showing how no one sees me, finding those demons, feeling a disassociation with them first. That seems to be the crucial part. Maybe that's why Jesus was so effective at it. He was able to pierce with a laser. This half is not you. This portion over here is not you. That portion's gone. Let it be gone. It's a technology, really. What we're talking about is a technology, and it sounds insane to even talk about it in a regular way, but it's not. Like this makes total sense.
It does. It really does. I'm glad you brought up sovereignty because that's something that I think a lot of kids who grew up, a lot of adults now who grew up in like a Christian home, didn't necessarily have. I don't feel like I had it, because everything was always about someone else. I'm not sovereign. I'm not.
Yeah.
So the idea that like I let something in, it's like I'm not in charge. It's not. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's not like I have. But yeah, I think you're right. It is a total science, and it is so important to have that grounding. It's funny that you bring up the feet because I had no idea that there was an energy center in your feet. So all this time that I've been like doing these spiritual practices and like grounding, I never considered the most obvious one. So now when I try doing that, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to start with my feet. Like whatever this root chakra is, that's great, but like I'm touching the ground.
Yeah.
So that's really vital. And that is really powerful to even be in tune with your body so that you know what it feels like. Because I think I told you, I had this kind of like urban walkabout scenario, which ended really ridiculous. I ended up back here at my folks' home, which was not where I was supposed to be. The spirit was really obvious about that. But I got here, and my dad could sense something, and he tried like cast it out, because he's in that kind of faith. He's gonna cast demons out. He's gonna do it. And I had no idea what he was talking to. What it felt like to me was, you're yelling at the core of my heart. Like, and we've had some conversations where it's like, dude, I don't think you even know what my auric field really looks like if it doesn't look like you.
Wow.
You know, so it's that, like, how do we recognize when there's something, like, how in tune do you need to be to perform that science? You know, accurately, lovingly, correctly, for it to be effective. Because I had no idea how long that thing stayed on, you know, afterwards. I remember sitting in the room and like trying to work on some art projects, and like I'm looking at my Kindle, like doing some research, and I heard this like, you suck. I was like, what? No. I was like, is that just residual from this space? Is that, you know, you really trying? Like, whoa, I don't think so. You know, so I don't know how long it stuck with me before I was like, whatever that is, it's gotta go. You know, but it is a science. It is something you have to be, you need to know how it works. And I think out of all the examples, Jesus would have known. He would have known how that works. So he was able to do that.
Yeah.
You know,
And Krishna, so much is similar between Jesus and Krishna. And it would be, it's interesting because both of them talk about the answers is found in the dark. There's a couple of passages in the Bible where it's actually looking into the darkness, or seeing with the one eye, the pineal. And the idea of finding your center would be just as important as washing of your feet. You are placing your emotional awareness back into your body. And that's why so much of everything around culture, around mind control, is about pulling you out of your body. Everyone's trying to sell you an ascension program where you get to escape the terrible prison of your body. Meanwhile, we've been given this freaking meat Ferrari, this most amazing freaking, you know,
like,
not even a car. It's like a part jet, part plane, part underwater submarine, part spacesuit. Like, it does all this amazing stuff. But we're taught from the very beginning, oh no, your body's, it's a problem. It's ill-designed. Kneecaps are the worst invention in the world. No one would put a bowling ball on top of a head like that. But it's just all this heads and jars kind of jargon, where even right now, you and I are talking and all we get to see of each other is our head. You know, this is what technology does. It's always going to be doing that to us because it has advantages to doing that. When I go to the city to see my parents, they live in Atlanta, I notice almost right away, not consciously, I just see it and I'm like, oh wow, there it is, how close people are willing to stand next to each other. Like, if there's a line in a gas station or whatever, I mean, or at Costco or whatever, people are all up in each other's grill, like really freaking close. And
yeah,
no one feels it. Like, no one feels their aura. I take that to mean that their aura is deep, small, it's tight. It's like a real packed acorn, you know, and it's only in a certain area that they have. And that creates all these openings for all these other kind of spirits to enter. And this could even be disease. It could even be the source of that. Your auric field is not big enough to provide that protection. So what you have is, this is why I was saying earlier, let's not even call them spirits, let's call them ethereals, because if your ego is that small, your body is sticking outside of its curtain of safety, and other things can get into it that way. I'm going to be really crude right now, but it's just such an important part. Remember how we talked about the umbilical cord, and like the infant is inside the aura until it's born. The infant comes out through the genitals eventually. You know, it comes out through the private parts. I I really think that sodomy is a way of breaching the auric field to
Mm.
allow for possessions to happen. I'm not trying to say that no one should ever uh, kiss another person's genital. I'm not trying to go there. I'm just trying to say that if you look at how the body is a torus, like
Hmm.
when we put things in our body, we don't actually put them inside of us. If I eat a bowl of cherries or whatever, I'm putting them inside of my torus, and they're just coming out the other side. Like they're that's all that's happening. There's a mucous membrane passage. It's very long and intricate. You definitely need directions to navigate all the curves, but it's you don't actually go inside the body. The mucous membrane simply pulls from it what it chooses to pull from those nutrients as it goes down. When you have okay, so I'm bringing this up because a lot of demons, like the demonic spirits of the old, there's usually something involving some butt sex. Like there's like a devil, and there's like, you know, the devil will be kissed in the ass or vice versa, or there's some kind of like butt sex. There's also a lot of Aleister Crowley about the homunculus, which is like this really gross like birth of something out of your anus. It's there's always this butt play.
Hmm.
Makes sense to your auric field. If you go back to what we're talking about, it makes sense to me that the mechanics of that would work that way. That through anyway, I don't want to make this a discussion about all that, but I just want us to understand the technology. You know, I just want us to understand how this would work, how this could work, and why. This would explain why anal rape is such a it's such a nasty fucking thing, because it's a literal possession. The
Hmm.
rapist could be possessed, and by doing this to someone else, whether it be a child in a church or, you know, I mean, just all the terrible things, that is a form of exorcism, the real world of exorcism, meaning a demon is brought into the world, a new demon is born into another body through this rape, through these kinds of things. And that's why you have all these old rituals of these massive orgies that, like in
Hmm.
Rome especially, where a lot of gods were called up, a lot of spirits, a lot of demons were, that was their playground, that was their chemical soup, as it were, to either reproduce or even be expunged, I guess, because it again, all this is about consent. It could even be that that's the exact same magic as how you breed a new life. You know, if a man and a woman get together and they join in just the way, the exact same thing is happening. They are exercising a new life instead of a demonic spirit or an ethereal or whatever. Any
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, no, you're totally fine. There's an energy center there. It's not like the root chakra or something. There's actually something else. I can't remember what it's called. It's in the book that's sitting behind me. But there is something at the very, very base of your spine, like at the very tip of your tailbone. And I've done healing work with it, and it is a really powerful center. And that it makes sense for that to be like, we're going to go right here because it's at the base of your spine. That goes all the way up. And you know, I've felt like doing certain healing things, like something back here just opening, something getting off. You know, just it goes out that way.
Yep.
You know, so that makes a lot of sense. And it is a total violation. It is a total, you know, when it is a situation like rape, it is, you know, it's saying I'm entering your auric field, and I don't give a crap about your sovereignty, because at some point you let it down enough. I mean, and I hate saying that because it always sounds like it's your fault, because a lot of times you do this stuff unconsciously.
Yep.
Um, and I was wondering, I told you I was studying human design, and something that whole system brings up is the different types of auric fields that people have. So some people, I think the statistic for it is like, I thought it was 74. So it's 70 to 74% of the world populace has what is called a generator aura. It means that they can put stuff out, but it also means that they receive. They receive a lot. people like the pharaohs, they were manifestors. Their aura is very closed off. You know when you've met a manifestor. I've encountered somebody. I'm like, whoa, they are closed. But they get stuff done.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, so we have these different aura fields, and so I would be very interested to see how many scenarios where we're invaded are these types. You know, is it somebody who's really secure in themselves? You know, what's it going to take to break that auric field? You know, somebody who only samples, you know, do they sample something wrong and take it? You know, there are just these, I would just be interested to know, because I think, yeah, I thought it was interesting when you said people are so close. You know, our field is my arm stretched out plus another arm length.
Yeah. Yeah.
Field. You know, and you're right, we are always so intimate. I think human beings crave that intimacy. While we are very much programmed to be in each other's space, you know, we want that closeness at the same time. So I think that's hard, and I've definitely done experiments recently, you know, trying to keep somebody, you know, keep that awareness. It's like, oh wow, okay, now I know that person's in my field. And something that system really teaches, and the cool thing about it is to find your particular center. So my center is sacral. So when I'm feeling like something's really weird, I can ground in my sacral. You know, I can like bring my awareness back to my body, to my field, and tap into, you know, my connection with earth, with spirit, and be like, okay, continue the conversation. I don't have to take in everything, you know, I don't want to be closed off, because then we're not connecting, but I don't have to, I can be more discerning in that sense. I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of just something I'm still learning about and getting into.
Well, I think for me, I found a lot of magic in actually reading about the term grounding, and that by putting your feet, you know, in the dirt, in the grass especially, you're pulling up just billions of electrons. And the moment I started picturing that happen, the moment I noticed, this is why I bite my nails when I drive a car. It's because I'm building up all this static charge for hundreds and hundreds of miles on top of rubberized tires. So I'm insulated, like through the world. I'm blowing, you know, a comb over the balloon, or whatever you want to say, like over and over again. I'm squeaking this out. And I'm full of all this energy now. I have all this static energy. So I'm going to bite my nails, or I'm going to eat pistachios, or I'm going to really want a large French fry. And just so I can just eat one fry every couple miles or whatever. It's this constant, what I really need is to ground. What I really need to do is just pull over and just touch my feet into the ground. No shoes. I need to remove the rubber, and I just need to feel that. That's all. And it doesn't even have to be ground. It'll work through concrete. It'll work through anything. I don't want to set myself up where I need to find a church. It has to be on consecrated ground. It's got to be marble. It's got to be facing north. No. And these are the traps that we're given. These are the traps that we're given, that we're told, well, I can only feel this way if I can make it to church on Sunday, and I can promise this, or I can do that. And it's much more, for me, it's much more close. I can't live in a city because everyone there is so small. I like my aura's big, where I just feel more comfortable. Like if I'm in a line, I give someone a good 10 feet ahead of me, unless it's a situation where it's not, you know, it doesn't work that way. But what I mean is, because I get that sometimes we have to condense. An airplane is a perfect example. It's why I hate flying though, because I know that when I get on a plane, I'm not going to be able to ground, and I'm going to have to keep my auric field within this tiny box. Like that's where it's going to have to stay. That's where it's going to be difficult for me. So have always found myself living a campground is like my perfect scenario, because in campground land, people give everyone a really wide berth. If you notice, like when you're camping, you can be like, hey neighbor, but there's always a good like 30 feet, you know, of like, you know, you're there and I'm here, and, you know, none of us are threatening each other, but none of us are like, you know, all up in our grill. For me, it's always been that energy, like that's really what's happening. And as long as we're trained over and over to keep that auric field tight, I could be wrong about this, but I think that's really what's killing us. That's what makes us more into slavery. That's what makes us more accepting of our lack of sovereignty is that, well, I'm just this big. So why, I get that all the time. Well, who are you to say that you could change the system, James? And it's like, well, how, who am I not to say that? Like, why can't my auric field, like, I'm talking to Colorado right now. We are connected right now, and you are all the way in Colorado. Sure, we could pretend this is all technology, but what's keeping us talking, Rachel, is that I'm interesting you and you're interesting me. We have a consent prana agreement going on. That's really what's keeping our connection together. Otherwise, you'd be like, I gotta go. This is weird, or I would do the same. So it's our prana, our auric field is so much bigger than anyone is ever going to give us credit for. They can't afford to give us credit for that. The moment they give us credit for that, we don't have one Bible. We have 7 billion Bibles. Each of us become our own scripture writers. Each of us become our own necromancer, basically. And it's probably safe to say that the elite, I use that term loosely, but the elite that kind of pull the strings are basically just technologically advanced necromancers. But they don't have, I like what you said about they have a very hard shell. They don't have to emote necessarily. They can more just send, like they're not imbued by others. They are emoters of something, like the Pharaoh. That's a perfect example. That's in a way, that's kind of where psychopathy comes in. It's that hardening of that shell, of that auric shell. It's so hard that maybe you're sending out your own possessive etheric vibes, and that's how one human's able to possess another. That's how a Beyonce is able to possess millions of people with her music. It's the exact same science. It's the exact same technology. There's just someone who's really good at it, behind the scenes, that's understanding how the curtain works, which knobs to pull, and things like that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would agree. Because I've really recognized like how powerful that type of communication is. I mean, it is spiritual. I mean, you talk about the ground, but I really think it's every element. I mean, the air, the very air that we breathe, that is also such an intimate connection. Sometimes all I need is a breath to be like reset, and so when you're in someone's space, you're breathing in all of that, all of those things, subatomic particles, all that little stuff. You're breathing it all in, all their emotions, all their thoughts, and that's good to an extent, but there are those people out there. I don't think every manifester is on it to be wicked, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were elites, as you say, who are very aware of their auric field, who know, I have this ability. I don't have to take anything in. It's not what my energy does. I put stuff out, so, and I have been in situations with people who definitely take advantage of that kind of stuff. I had this old friend in high school that I reconnected with, and he was really into Satanism. And I actually really love the article you wrote about that, because I'm like, yeah, that's so true. It's maybe there's a piece of it that the truth is like valid, like, yeah, we should totally be free, it's all about our will, blah, blah, blah. There's probably something very good, but it's a sliver, because it is essentially about manipulation. And when I was hanging out with him, I was kind of exploring Satanism just to understand. I'm terrible. I have to understand everything. So I was like, tell me what this is about. He gave me this copy of his Bible, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to read this and see what this is. But the whole time, I'm like, he was a legit magician. He was making all this stuff happen, and it looked really pretty, and it looked really shiny. But I've experienced synchronicities. I've experienced them without anyone else's interference. And I'm like, okay, this looks pretty, but this is not, some of the stuff that you're connecting with me about is information I didn't mean to surrender to you. I've had several people do that. They're like, well, I got you this special rock. I'm like, okay, I felt the vibe for that rock like months ago, and you're just now picking up on it.
Yeah.
Your old tricks, you know, it's sneaky, and it is
Yeah.
very manipulative. And it's amazing to me how many people do tap into it. You know, the kinds of stories that they're told, the kinds of exposure that they have, the kinds of things they do let in, you know, to even go there. Because I read the book, but man, I could smell what's sunk underneath it, you know?
Yeah.
So it just takes a lot of discernment. And I don't know if that's something you have to teach people. Is how
Yeah.
to be discerning.
And that's why the system doesn't teach us that. It
No.
really does need us open, and I think that's probably how the entire thing works. It's sovereignty is a spell. Sovereignty is a state. To explain what I mean by spell, it's a state of trance. Okay, so first of all, everything we do is a trance. Like, I mean, if you're going to be a gardener, you're going to enter into different trances of, I'm going to be weeding, I'm going to be planting, I'm going to be tilling, I'm going to be pruning. These are when you are washing your hair, you're in a trance. When you're brewing coffee, you're in a trance. So I mean trance, like literally just this hypnotic state that we put ourselves in to do anything. To snowboarding is my favorite trance, as an example. Like, it's something that you become an action. You cease to be a noun and you become an action. So these trances that we get into for the Satanist become opportunities to explore our own power. And it could be that the reason why Satanists are so good at psychopathy is because they are possessed by an etheric spirit that understands how this works. They understand the technology involved. That's why so many psychopaths, they say, don't have empathy, but are still perceptive. That perception is the slow perception, just like you talked about. Like, so 6 months ago, I told you that I really liked, tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, and I you know what I mean. It's it's not that the instance doesn't feel genuine. There's something else about the prana. There's you feel the essence of what's happening energetically, and you're like, that doesn't feel right, and it only gets broadcasted up through this much higher superficial level of feelings, where we say that guy has bad breath. Like seriously, that's like a really great manifestation of that. Or that guy smells bad, or I don't like the way that guy looks, or I don't like the way he did that or said that. All of these are the similar kind of manifestations where we are just looking for an excuse to explain to ourselves this invisible prana economy that's happening between us all. And that's why it's so important that we necromancy ourselves, so we can have a rational conversation with our own senses, because we're invaded by someone that's going, no, you need to be more codependent, or else you're not going to find true love, because that's what the song told you in the mall. Or you need to repent more, you need to feel this way, or you need to feel that way, or you need to feel like you're broken. It's a perfect example. The idea of salvation really implies that you're broken. You have to first buy into the idea that I'm broken. And it's only when you believe you're broken can you then go out and have a marketed desire for salvation. So you becomes an economy. It becomes a transaction that has to happen first. All of these things, these transactions, could be negotiated between you and 3 or 4 demons, or 1 demon, or 16 demons. These etheric energies, urges, desires, could create this long-term habit or desire for, I want to be fixed, or I want to not be a racist. I don't want to be a sexist. I don't want to be an environmental dirty person. I don't want to be a blue-collar worker. I don't want to be a toxic male. I don't want to be white anymore. I don't want to be Christian anymore. In other words, all of these things could easily be etheric possessions that are convincing us to have a conversation. Why? Because there's a prana economy that will open up for them if we get into Satanism, or if we get into, you know, materialism. Even I think materialism is probably the strongest out there. Scientism is a very powerful demonic force that convinces all of us that the world is made up of plastic, tangible bits, and inside of that there happens to be certain bits of real life that are souls, but only in humans. They don't exist in animals. No, plants can have souls. Like, there's all this weird shit that comes with that, where you're left again in the same place where you're open to possession because you've turned off all this pranic connection to everything around you. So all of this is manipulation. It all could be manipulation. All of this could be seen as, this is just simply how a squid manipulates a shell to open it up to get the clam inside, or how a fish manipulates a trap, or how a bear or a human, you know, all of these are just us manipulating our environment, and our consent to be manipulated by them is really the big one, because you could argue that our consent is always going to be measured by our ability to defend ourselves. In other words, if you have the means to defend yourself by saying no to someone who's offering you maybe some bad drugs, that's your consent. If you choose not to do that, even though it's, well, because when I was 5 this happened, or because of this, it doesn't matter. If you had the ability to say no and didn't, then maybe that's all it takes energetically. I'm going all over the place here. There's so much to it. I want us to figure it out. And anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. I would totally agree. And I'll go ahead and go here and say, you know, not only do they, whoever, you know, is pulling strings, who's conscious of this exchange, they know what they're doing. They're not afraid to even tell us what they're doing, because it is bondage. I'll go there. It's bondage. I just told, you know, my mom about this video. I don't even know what made me click on it. I don't know why I was like curious about it. But I watched this. It was advertised as a performance, a bondage performance, and everybody got to wear masks. How fun. And it was. And, you know, the person who, I don't know if they were supposed to be filming, but they did. And it's like, okay, what you're seeing right now is them telling you exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The divine feminine is totally being taken advantage of. Oh, because it's fun. It feels good. You told me I could hurt you.
Yep.
And maybe somewhere, you know, some consent was given, and that is exactly what's going on. And we let it continue because, I mean, I just flipped through a magazine just to flip through it. And what did I land on? How to keep it alive in the bedroom through bondage. I'm like, yeah, let's perpetuate a negative, toxic narrative. That's going to keep it alive for me. Yeah, you can hurt me. I love when you hurt me. That's just asking whatever that entity is to continue doing what they're doing. I love when you know, make my life suck. I love that. That's not intimate. That's not love. You know, the only type of pain that's acceptable is the pain that you go through with childbirth, which you can easily turn into an ecstatic process. That's what I've been connecting to. And it's the pain relief. You know, whatever, if I'm in a conversation with somebody I love and something is dropped, that kind of pain, that's good, because that opens the door. But if it's, you know, I'm going to hurt you because I'm bigger, because you let me do this, that's not it. And that's exactly what these people do societally. You know, when our auras are like this, we're in self-bondage. We've put ourselves in that place.
Yep.
You know, I mean, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting that it's so in our face constantly, and we're so okay with it because that's what's been sitting out, you know.
That's so astute. And if you look at our tax system, if you look at everything is about that, making bondage either patriotic or erotic or liberation. Those are the big three, if you think about it. And I've noticed, I wrote about this a little bit in my last book about how important it is. This consent, it's, first of all, this consent thing makes so much sense now, just from us talking about it. It's like, I'm really, really glad we're talking about this, because when you consent to bondage, what you're really doing is creating a masochist and creating a sadist at the same time. You're creating an avenue for possession in both roles, where now you have the ability to do that. I have to, well, I'm going to try and come back to this, because there is some magic in becoming vulnerable, placing yourself in a vulnerable situation. And I don't want to skip that. And I really, really think that there's a lot of, I don't know if it's a lot, because I don't know, but I would imagine that there's a big portion of this that is more about the liberation, maybe the goal of the liberation by putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. However, most of what I see broadcasted, or most of what I see pushed, like the 50 Shades of Grey or all the other stuff, it's really coming down to this: sadism is okay, masochism is okay. The pride stuff is a perfect example. I got so much trouble for my work on the eugenics of pride. Is basically one of my last articles a few months ago. It was just talking about why there's a month-long corporate culture of sadism and masochism that's being broadcasted out. We're literally preaching sodomy through the American Pride movement. Again, sodomite whoever you want. It's this, I'm not even trying to say that, but my point is that why is the corporations, why is every airline that wants to compete with each other, why are they all lockstep and barrel changing their logos to sodomite colors and pushing that narrative all month long? Like, that's millions of dollars that are being wasted on archetype connection. It's not fair to say, well, no, only they want to harness the gay travel market. No, the beautiful thing about actually the airline market is that it's a market, it's a controlled market. Everyone has to travel at some point, from the richest to the poorest person. If you participate in society, you're going to have to air travel at some point. So this is a captive audience. This isn't something where you have to try and cater to. Additionally, everyone knows that people just want the cheapest flight. No one says, I want to be on that flight because they have a gay agenda. This is not how people shop right now. So it shows me that there's a eugenics program underneath this, but there's also something deeper. There's this push for sadism and masochism becoming normalized. And I see that exact same thing in racism. You are given points, you're giving virtue points for flogging yourself in public for how racist you are. And that's the only time you get credit for it. You can walk down the street, and if you see someone that's not the other race and it's 2 a.m, it's okay for you to feel paranoid and to go on the other side of the street. But if anyone else is with you, you have to run up to them and give them flowers and give them a hug. Like this is a turning against yourself and getting rewarded a virtue from someone else. That's why I call it a public flogging. You're being rewarded for flogging yourself about how racist you are all the time. The church does it too, though, with I'm more of a sinner than you are. No, I'm more of the sinner than you are. No, if anyone's going to burn in hell, it's me, because of what I did today and then yesterday. And people are like, oh my God, I hadn't even considered that. You're talking about how you wronged a cat 6 years ago by whatever. And there's a contest on every single level to raise masochism up higher above everything else. And that goes so in tune with what we're talking about this idea of consent. Because if they can make you dopamine hit at a bad behavior, they fucking got you bad, man. And that's what the alcoholism does. It's, I want to reward this person with dopamine for abusing themselves. And once the demon can do that enough, they now have a fortress. They now have here's a home. We've bought this home too. We own half of the Milwaukee Bruins fans. We have real estate now. Our demonic empire now has real estate in half of the football teams, and on every Super Bowl It is a celebration of the Bacchus spirit where all of us are going to converge. And for 3 hours, we're going to have this ceremony, this masochism pushed again. I'm not trying to say people don't have fun. It's not healthy. I know you guys get what I'm saying. These are just the extremes that show that this is how you turn someone and become a permanent island for these etheric spirits. For these, it's like an Uber service or an Airbnb for demons. You know, it really is.
Yeah, that's why I think your inner narrative and the demonization of the ego is such a big deal. You know, because growing up and hearing that egoic voice and being told, oh, well, that's the devil, that's not you. You know, that is so dangerous because you don't trust yourself. You don't know how to recognize those voices when they're in you. You don't realize when you're perpetuating a toxic narrative that they can work with. They're like, yeah, I'm happy to let you think you need to kill yourself. Yeah, you do stuff, you know, because whatever it takes to have that foothold, you know, I hate that language, but it's what I have to use. You know, that stronghold gets
so built. True. That's why never, ever in any science have we ever said, oh, no, there's just one person that's the expert on psychology, and that's Sigmund Freud. Like nowhere ever in any other kind of science have we played that bullshit, except for special relativity. But I'm not going to go into that right now because we're going to talk about space. If you look at psychology, though, you have one figure, only one, and that guy was fucking twisted. I mean, he was so possessed himself that he decided that the ego was the evil that he had to destroy. And he created a possession in everyone's mind that everyone adopted that said, yes, men want to have sex with their mothers. That's their prime motivation. And because of that, it creates this ego, and this ego is a mother raper. I mean, that's literally what the psychology teaches. Now, people in the comments are probably going to go, no, Freud was a genius because of this. I don't give a shit. Fine. If you want to call him a genius, I don't care. The point is that this is what culture pulled out of him. And you, as an ability to train all of us, which is that basically, here's the deal. Ego's bad. Anyone who has an ego wants to have sex with their mom. Like, how do you get more like, okay, I don't want that. There's no way that would make anyone. It takes so much courage. I've been doing this for the last year, just what you did. I defend the ego when it's not supposed to be defended. I find opportunities and I say, I don't think a narcissist is someone that has a big ego. I think it's someone that has no ego. I think it's someone that lacks so much of an ego that they become possessed by whatever etheric spirit can take over, and it turns them into a psychopath temporarily. And then they're a fish on the dock that's trying to get air. And all of us are going up to him going, oh, fish, why do you need water so much? Oh, I got to have water. Oh, I'm gasping. That's how we treat narcissists now.
Yeah.
And I get it because they're mean, but we're attacking the spirit of the alcohol. We're attacking the person because we haven't disassociated with them from that demon yet. We haven't been able to show them. We haven't necromanced them. We haven't treated them like Jesus would, which is like, oh, wow, hey, let's get you some water. Hey, I'm going to wash your feet right now. Why? Because your ego needs it, man. Your ego needs this right now. Look at how neglectful your feet are. And then you start having these people, your body's felt this, mine has, where you just shudder, like something just overcomes you, where you're just like, oh my God, that truth is just so deep. Like, thank you. That's part of what makes us cry, I think, because that shuddering is like your ego, like trembling, very much like a duck. I hate this. I keep sounding like I'm jumping around, but I swear this is related. When one duck lands into a water next to another duck, the ducks get pissed. Like they're just like, man, you scared me. Why'd you have to land right here? And the duck goes like he furls himself off, and then he's fine. He's like, okay, there. All right. You're not an asshole anymore. Like it's you're fine again. Dogs do this too. They'll shake themselves off because we're more complex creatures. We're not aware that we do the same thing and that we need these same kinds of techniques to shudder and shake stuff off. I think in a lot of ways, this crying is what does that.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm talking to you, there's certain things that you've said that I've just felt in my shoulders. This is something I felt for the past year, where if someone says something to me that really touches me, I fucking feel it in my shoulders. Like I feel this warm, tingly vibration. And I call it my, we're all tuning forks in skin. And when we say something to each other, if we're not possessed, and it could be unpossessed, by the way, but I'm a lot cleaner than I've ever been in my life when it comes to outside influences. I just have more sovereignty now. And it could just be that once you have enough sovereignty, you end up feeling this way all the time. You end up feeling this kind of vibration all the time. And isn't that really what Krishna and Jesus are? Are people that are just have like complete sovereignty? Just like 1000%, they are home. They are in their temple. That would explain so much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of why it's hard to stay in the programs of worshiping those entities. Because that's what they are. They're, I was reading about Druidry, and evolution's a spiral up. That's how they saw it, was just a spiral up. And whatever the gods are, whatever those entities are, they're considered mighty beings. And each one of us has the potential to be a mighty being. The funny thing is, it's on the tip of our nose. It's so close that it's
so right. Yeah, but meanwhile, with the Nicene Creed, people like Constantine, the Council of Trent, we have these church that's constantly telling us, no, there's only one Messiah, and he's dead. That means none of you guys can vibrate like that. No. Krishna was not the same. No, that's a myth. There's only one way. There's only one Lord. There's only one answer. And if you don't follow that, you probably want to either have sex with your mother or you're going to burn in hell. Pick one. It doesn't matter to me which one. And so we're left with, so I have to follow Jesus, but don't think I can tap into that. Like I'm supposed to believe that, okay, so one person did have the answer. Boy, it'd be great if he was around. Oh, well, it's insane. Yeah. It's the perfect way to possess. It's the perfect way to have the truth come out. Like here she's walking around and people are like, dude, that dude's got it going on. Like what an aura on that guy. And it's the perfect way to have truth already be out and then squelch it. Okay, well, how are we going to do this? Well, first we got to crucify him. Wow, Stan, really? Yeah. If you want to squelch, here's what we got to do. We have to crucify him, and we're going to have to say that he's the son of God, that he's a biologically born, the only son. Well, Stan, that's kind of fucked up. No, trust me, because then it makes none of us are children of God anymore, because now only Jesus is the child of God. We are bastard children of God now. So it turns everyone else into like these bastard sort of kind of quasi-adopted, but not really. Like they're not like really the children of God, so to speak. Yeah. It's creating this pyramid scheme, and people say, well, no, the Roman Catholic Church isn't Christianity, but it is. For hundreds of years, that's where it came from. And this idea that Peter is the guy at the nightclub to heaven. He's the guy that's guarding the gate. That's like, sorry, dude, your shorts are last year's season. You got to pull your collar up. You got to, you're not getting in. You're not getting in this club until you can show me that you're worthy. Again, it creates that salvation thing again. And on earth, it creates that auric opening where you're like, fuck, man, I'm never going to be, why would I command my feet? Why would I have an aura that's 20 feet large? I don't deserve that. And look at what they did to the last guy.
Yeah. I agree. And it's unfortunate, really, because I feel like there are so many people that are in that who have genuine hearts and have real experiences and have, great connections. And it's too bad. Even when I talk to my own folks, it's like, oh my gosh, you are so close. Like I'm not any greater I'm not, anything special, but when you can see it,
Mm-hmm.
when you can see, oh man, you are on the tip of a revelation.
Yep.
Just get rid of this idea that you could not be. It's like they slide on it. Sometimes we'll agree, yeah, you can be just like Christ. And then sometimes it's like, oh no, you can't do that though.
Yep.
Like, so which parts of him can I do? I can do healing, but if that's not my calling, it's like certain actions are acceptable. And it's funny because I grew up in an environment where miracles are expected. You want it. To me, I think if you need a miracle, you've gotten to the point where you need a miracle, you've already screwed up. You shouldn't need a miracle. They're amazing, but I don't want to see them.
Yeah.
So, but it's this attitude that, you can do certain things and yet you're still not Jesus status. They pray so hard for ears to open, for limbs to be reborn, for all this incredible magic. Really, you're asking for magic, but it doesn't work if you're not the magician.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only difference between any of that, like I was talking to somebody and it's like elemental, you can't control an elemental. What you can have is a good relationship with one. Because you can't control fire, you can't control wind, you can have a good relationship with wind and say, yeah, I need your help. I'm a conduit. I don't control you. And it's the same thing. I can see where people might be like, I can ask Jesus to help me. But the whole point was that you're the same. And in that, you're missing out on everything you could be. You're missing out on your opportunity to become that mighty being by still holding it back, by still saying, this person is still above me. That program is so deep. I think I told you I had these dreams about pulling programs out of my own head. There were like pieces of metal that I was pulling off of my eyes. I'm like, I need different eyes. There was one where there were these metal pins that I was pulling out of my head. I was like, what am I taking out? They were rusted. They were old. It's old stories. It's these old programs. And I think it's good to see how long it's been going on. But I think it's also important to look for where there could have been a simple misunderstanding in an unevolved state. It's like they were afraid of this darkness. Don't go into the cave. It's evil, it's scary. Well, that inherent fear wasn't bad, but it becomes bad when you say, oh no, I said you can't go in, or, when it can twist. I think a lot of stuff that is controlling now was never meant to be controlled. It was never meant as control. It was a simple misunderstanding in a state of unawareness, like Adam and Eve. It's like that story. When I read the Epic of Gilgamesh, this is what it sounded like to me. Nature Boy was having a great time until girls came and fucked it up. That's what it sounded like to me. I was like, really? But you wrote a whole book about how women are evil, how men are in charge. You really ran with that idea. I wonder how much of it was so basic, new experience to humanity that's just gotten spiraled out of control.
I think you nailed it. The Kismet here is amazing. I just last night, I'm trying to finish the Epic of Gilgamesh. Like I've never actually read the whole thing. I've listened to it and heard stories, but it's just to hear it, you're just like, wow. And my last column mentions that Adam was a Kabbalist, and that how could a God, a living God that's everywhere, omnipresent, omniscient, how could he have a concept of banishment? Like, how could he even banish something? Like, how would that even work? I mean, that's so against that. But man, a Kabbalist would definitely be all about banishment. It's men do that all the time. We claim property, we claim sovereignty, we claim rights on things. It would make so much more sense that it was Adam who's the one that told the angels, hey, don't let anyone in this nightclub. You'll see why. And then he's got this whole system set up. And if the angels are ethereals, they don't have, we forget how amazing it is to be able to lie. I'm not saying lying's great, but what I mean is that to lie requires that we have a timeline in our head that is separate from the from reality. That
Yeah.
timeline is a pretty complex thing if you think about it. Like, to be able to create that construct in our mind of a timeline and then cause it to fork and say, here's what was really happening, but then here's this other avenue. Etherics don't have the storage capacity. It's much like a cellular phone. An etheric spirit like fire, which is a perfect example. I love how you put that, by the way, that you're making a relationship, because you can't make fire burn upside down. You know, it's always going to have this characteristic. But these etherics, they don't have the heavy hard drives to keep all this separate timelines. It's just a lot of overhead. But man does. Man's full of this kind of stuff. So it would make sense that you could lie to an angel with a flaming sword and go, all right, dude, God told me to tell you that no one gets past here. And the angels would be like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm an etheric spirit. You're commanding me. Why? Because you're a Kabbalist. You're the first man. You're as powerful as man has ever been. And you're now commanding this situation. And now you have a situation where you can set up a paradigm. Well, it was the fucking women who did it. It fucking brought in this fruit and all blah, blah, blah. But you're taking the thing that gives you the most life and creating it a bad knowledge. You're saying the gnosis of necromancy is the gateway to sin. It's literally how Jesus had the gnosis of how this works is exactly what you're forbidden to eat. That's the forbidden fruit, which is, I mean, that blows your mind when you do the math, and you're just like, the very thing that threw us out is the thing that we're clinging to, that's stopping us from realizing the very thing that we came here to realize. It's the perfect camouflage that you see everywhere across the world. An octopus doesn't turn orange with red polka dots. He's not hiding in front of a cover of Wonder Bread. He's in the ocean. He's going to look exactly like that. This camouflage is going to look exactly like the very thing that will set us free, is what it's pretending to push us away from. It's so obvious, but it's only obvious once you get to this side of the shore where you can look back. But meanwhile, you're surrounded by all these people that are embracing that thing in the wrong way, just like you talked about, where it's like they're right there, but they're not here. They're there, but they're not in line with it yet. They're still off. And anyone that tries to challenge this is, I mean, that's why I've been searching for this my whole life. But every time I go to a church, especially in the South, I can't tell you how many times I'm sent home with a note or a private conversation that's like, your son needs to calm it down in the Sunday school class. He's asking too many. No, we're not going here. You know, one of them said, I think your son's possessed. I think he's got some kind of Lucifer spirit in him or something. And it's really fucked up to be told that when you're a kid, like to have someone tell you that. And I'm the one that's just asking questions. So the whole time I'm thinking, okay, my questions mean that I'm evil. Like, me asking this stuff is evil. Again, you're right there. You're so close. And by telling me that, it's the last place I'll ever be able to look is on the other side of my hand, because I'm trapped over here. It's such a mind fuck. It's so bad.
It is. And on the flip side, you were lucky enough to have someone at least say, we think he's possessed, because I know, I almost said we, because I know my sister probably experienced. It's just really what these things look like, and then being told what you are and are not. So normal childhood behavior, like, apparently I was a riot and would throw, like, I'm very sensitive. So if I didn't want to do something, I would get very upset. And so instead of, I think my parents know better now, at least I know my mom does after studying childhood and child behaviors. It's really hurtful to have somebody tell you, that's not you. That's not you. It's like, what this is me. This emotion, this passion, this whatever this is me. But being told that it's not is also a thought, because it's like, how do you know what a demon looks like if that's what you think it looks like? It's not the movie. Maybe you might get some insight, and I loved that conversation that you guys had when you were saying the face kind of more. Sometimes you get those glimpses, but it's not like the movies. It's not a physical action. It's like, it's a spiritual sight. You don't just see it. Like, it's not an acting out.
Yeah.
You have to be so careful when you talk to people and try to tell them what their identity is. It's like our culture is so into telling us who we are. Like, you don't get to decide who I am. And it's so funny that it's me. I hope I'm not getting too off track, but so much of the culture is set up from ancient cultures. You know, it's still very Roman, it's very Greek. You know, even in astrology, all these archetypes are Greek archetypes. You know, I've been experimenting, it's like, okay, well, my roots are not from there. I'm not Greek, I'm not Roman. You know, so messing with those archetypes, that shifts your entire perspective. You know, it's like so much of our culture is based on one culture. It wasn't even mine. And I'm told it's the right one. And if I deviate, there's something wrong with me. I'm demonic. I'm a witch. That's for getting back to the earth, for getting back to what I think the Garden of Eden probably was. You know, just being so connected to everything. The concept of animals eating each other wasn't fazing you because it was the truth. You know, I think somebody was saying, you know, in the Garden of Eden, animals didn't eat each other. They probably did. It just didn't concern you like it all of a sudden did. You know, you didn't see that as evil and good until something clicked. It just was. You know, so I think, but to even go there, that's not who I am. That's not my identity. It's so interesting. It's all hinged on identity because that's where our sovereignty lies. Yeah.
Well, this is why, as we learn our sovereignty more, one of the big things that we learn is our true relationship to the archetypes we have. Because, just as an example, because this hopefully people will feel this because I feel it. Ayn Rand is a writer that just really touched me. She wrote a book called The Fountainhead, and it blew me away. I'm now repeating. Did you just do something to the audio?
No.
Okay, everything I'm saying is now being repeated. Sorry, that's really annoying.
You're good.
Testing. Oh, it's still happening. Can you hit mute and then unmute again? Testing. Okay, now you're muted and I don't hear myself. Unmute, please. And now, now I'm hearing myself.
Echoing.
Testing. If I knew more about this, tell you what's causing that. But I can't go. It's like your microphone is picking up your headset now, when it wasn't earlier. I'm sure you didn't change anything, but something changed.
That's weird. Huh? It's something.
Let's see. No, it's still.
We're having an important conversation, so the energy is messing with it.
Well, we've gotten stuff out. Good. But you're going to have to mute me while I'm talking. It's going to be the only way we can keep going. Okay, there. Yeah. Sorry about that. On the archetypes, you'll have to do sign language if you want to say something, Rachel. Let me just get this out, because on the archetypes, what I've noticed is, okay, Ayn Rand, she wrote The Fountainhead. I mean, she wrote a lot of books, but The Fountainhead really touched me. It was about this architect that was growing up in the world that was rejecting itself. It was masochism. It was masochizing. I'm sure that's not the right word, but it was masochizing. It was cannibalizing itself. That's the word. And this architect was just fighting against that. He was trying to keep his passion. I'm bringing this up because so many readers have such an aversion to Ayn Rand now, like for whatever reason. People will say, oh, well, she's too elementary. Or people will say, oh, she was working for the overlords that are trying to overthrow the world. Or she was a cult leader. Or I mean, it doesn't matter. The point is that here I was getting so much power from this archetype of Ayn Rand. But when I shared that with other people, my power was being zapped by other people who didn't like that archetype. Now, I'm just giving that as one of really thousands of examples, because as we learn our sovereignty, as we gain sovereignty over ourselves, we start to realize that those archetypes are not who we are. But before we have sovereignty, we relate to our archetypes as if they are who we are. And I think that's what we end up seeing, both of us do, when we look back across the shore at Jesus, for example. I feel, I don't want to speak for you, but both of us have a very healthy relationship with the Jesus archetype. However, it's different than what others might have because they have associated themselves with that archetype. And that's why it's such a threat to everyone else involved when you start to convey, well, here's my relationship with this archetype now. For example, when I say Krishna and Jesus are the same archetype from different areas, that causes a lot of flack. People get very angry at that. They have associated themselves, they have identified with that archetype that's outside of their own body. And that's why they feel such a strong breach when someone else says something that they're not accustomed to hearing. That archetype needs to always be the same. So part of our sovereignty is realizing that I can still gain strength from Ayn Rand. I can still gain strength from Jesus. I could still gain strength from the Indigo Girls. That's another, like, it's just a really freaking good, I just freaking love their harmony, their way they play, whatever. But if I go out growing up, I couldn't get away with hanging out and just telling her, oh, I'm just freaking all about the Indigo. It just didn't play. Like it didn't play in my crowd. That was an archetype that I had to learn to have an intimate relationship with, a private relationship with. The same that I have with Ayn Rand, the same most people have with Jesus. So archetypes are almost stilts in a way. They're stilts that as we grow, we can learn to be taller in the forest by standing on these stilts. And as we grow, we learn to trade our stilts. Oh, well, here's a better set, or and sometimes they're taller, sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're just more stable, It's just these are all alchemical tools that we absolutely have to have because they help us build ourselves again. They're the scaffolding we use to build our own house, to make our own house strong. And that's really what Jesus is. He's someone that built his self strong enough in such a way that it's like a geodesic Buckminster Fuller dome where you're just like, holy shit, this is like an amazing archetype. Like, you could do so much in this thing. So our archetypes are meant to be constructive projects. They're meant to be things that we renovate, that we change ideas for, that we learn to grow and build from. I'm going to stop talking now. Hopefully you might want to react to that. Make sure you unmute yourself. Sorry.
No, that's good. I actually really love that about the stilts. I think that's really true. Because I love archetypes. I see the value in having them. And I think the only dangerous part is when we forget that they are expressions of us. We made them to remind us who we are, not to venerate and to worship and to cling to, because they are meant to evolve. They are meant to grow with us. So I love that. I think that's so true. We have certain things that we want to hold on to. And it's important so that we can also like see what's not us.
Yeah.
You know, because I've had stuff pop onto my radar and been like, oh, I might have to dig deep and see if that's really a part of me, if that's a part of the reality I'm going to perpetuate forward. You know, maybe that's something in someone else's reality that they want to hold on to, but as far as mine goes, I don't need that. I don't really see it serving myself. I can't imagine that it actually serves them, except for on a very low, shallow, you know, low vibrational level, which again, I don't want to sound like I'm so high, because I'm not, but you can recognize where you've come up and where you've, you know, what you've left behind.
Yeah.
So,
well, we all have our weaknesses and our strengths in all of our archetypes, you know, and someone might say that I'm really astute in this area, but then in this other area, you know, I'm not even a preschooler, you know, I'm below the neophyte. I don't even know that there's stuff for me to learn. So, and so much of, I like what you said, because so much of who we are is who we figured out we're not. Over all these years, the Dukes of Hazzard is a great example for me. I grew up I was just like, oh my God, I'm a Duke boy. I'm like the most, this is it. Like, this is the entire world for me, is I can relate to myself as one of the Dukes of Hazzard, and all of that, everything. Like, my entire existence was based off what they were going to do on Sunday, and if they were going to make the jump, and how they were going to get away from the cops. It's all these things are something that we still grow from, that we still build from. And that's really what nostalgia is. Nostalgia is an alchemical cement that it only really fits us. You know, yes, we'll see others that, oh, they groove on that too, and so we have that instant connection. But that's a very special cement that only really seeds ourselves and who we are. In fact, I think that's why our culture has spent so much effort trying to shame the Confederate flag. The rebel, the idea of someone being a rebel spirit, is someone that has sovereignty. In fact, the original founding of our country was based on the states being sovereign. It's a very dangerous archetype. If you're going to control the world, the last thing you want is for people venerating anything that's rebel. That's why we've told ourselves that the Civil War was about slavery. And I don't want us to get in another conversation, but damn it, it wasn't about slavery. I can look this up. At 2 years in, we still weren't talking about slavery. This war was not about slavery. But by painting it that way, it creates a very nice electric fence around sovereignty, around the rebel archetype, the rebel concept, that no one would dare tread on there and say, oh, well, yeah, the rebel flag's pretty freaking cool. Like, how dare you say that? I look at it as a alchemical duty that I have in my life to raise the elevation of the rebel flag in as much snooty people that I can find. I want to walk up to them proudly and say, oh, you think that's racist? Well, I think you're a freaking idiot. And I'm going to now we're going to go toe to toe, because I want you to feel shame around you having that mischaracterization about the rebel flag. That's my duty. I am a paladin for this archetype, for this stilt. I want others to come to this rebel flag later and go, hey, this is a pretty nice cabana. And someone to say, yeah, well, James True helped. He see this post over here? He added this support and he created this little awning here so others could come underneath that, because I'm constantly pushing and saying, don't you dare fucking talk shit about sovereignty. Don't you dare go there. And we do that with Jesus. We do that with science. We do that with all of our faith. We do that with art. We do that with music. This is the prana economy. This is the energy that's really happening underneath all the superficial bullshit that we pretend. We pretend this is about money. It's not. Zinc and paper, no, none of this is about zinc coins or paper dollars. This is about our belief system, the energy underneath all this currency, which is a finite resource. And that's another thing they lie to us about. They tell you, want you to think it's an infinite thing and it's not really worth much. But our beliefs are the most powerful resource that we have. We are, in a way, our own sort of power center, electric power board. we can send that energy out. And that's why 40% of it goes automatically to the government through our taxes. All that belief system that we have in the NASA program, in SpaceX, in Elon Musk, in invading 7 nations over the last several years, overthrowing Honduras, overthrowing Venezuela, murdering Gaddafi in Libya. All of these are brought about by our belief system and the archetype of America as being anything but the New World Order. And how does camouflage work? You hide behind the very thing that you claim to be fighting against or for, depending on how you want to look at the language. It's always the same freaking trick, man. It's always the exact same thing. And again, when you're on the other side of the shore, just like I'm on the other side of the shore of Jesus, I'm on the other side of the shore of sovereignty with America. And you can see, you can look right at it. You can go, we're so close. We're so close. But we're still waking up every day going, we have to be more patriotic. We have to believe in this more. And then only then will we protect our freedom. It's the same kind of possession. It's the same kind of archetypal possession that is going to keep controlling all of us until we alchemically wake up and say, I want to try sovereignty for a while. Like, I want to try being responsible for my own masochism, for my own grounding, for my own relationship with Christ, or my own relationship with Ayn Rand or the Indigo Girls, or whatever it's going to be. This is really why we're here. We pretend like these are the things that are here to waste the time in between our duties, but actually this is why we're here. That's why we spend all of our time in our head. 99% of our time is spent in our head. It doesn't matter how many people you're around. Most of your things are going to be, you're having this conversation with yourself. Yes, the environment's there, but it's your conversation with yourself of what shirt am I going to wear? What am I going to prepare for this meal? What am I going to do to raise these children? What am I going to do to raise myself? All this stuff. These are all self-sovereign exercises or practices. And the sooner all of us recognize that and say, yeah, this sounds good, let's do it, then the better off we're all going to be for this. We're so close. We're so close to being there. We just need a little tweak, or enough of us who already have this tweak just need to talk about it a little bit more, and it'll create that spillover, that leads to it all.
I would agree. And I think one of those little things that needs to be tweaked is the surrender of fear. Being sovereign is really scary if you've never been it before. If you've been a sheeple this whole time, what else could you possibly be? How's that going to work? Because it's true. I mean, really, we have everything we need. We need a lot less. We need to let go of a lot of the stories that we're being told on what success looks like, on what stability looks like. The patriotism, don't get me started. It's so toxic. Nationalism is a huge issue, and it causes us, it's like there's two different worlds. There are a slew of people who recognize we're a global family, but you're not going to have that global family if you still take pride in whatever your nation is. Like, be proud of where your roots are. That's great, but drop the flags. I actually appreciate what you said about the rebel flag, because I caught myself in one of those moments. I was dating someone, and we went out to eat, and he wore this shirt with this big rebel flag on it because he's from Georgia. And I was like, we're in the middle of Denver. There's all these black people. Like, what are you doing?
Yep.
But yeah, it's so much deeper. There are, it's funny that the rebel is so marketed now. I remember and wanting to be so punk rock, but I couldn't afford metal spikes. I couldn't, what is true rebellion has been marketed. Even, I go to some shows and it's like, okay, you're singing against the man, but you're still working for him. You're not feeding yourself. It's like, yeah, you're on the road touring. Well, maybe you should just tour locally so you can have a farm. I don't know. What is it going to take to put you in a true bardic state and be supported in your art? So that whatever you're saying, because your words are powerful, and I think people should hear them, but if you're going to be this rebel archetype, you have to really be it.
Yep.
You know, instead of buying into what society lets you do. It's so funny that they'll see you catch on to the truth, and then they'll amplify it. They'll desensitize you to it. You know, like for a while, you know, all the unicorn stuff, this is going to get a little out there, but man, just a few months ago, I think at the beginning of the year, everyone in the circles that I've been in was really emphasizing Capricorn. The higher octave of Capricorn is the unicorn. It's about you living authentically in your sovereignty and functioning as that's your job. It's the house of career. That's your job. So of course, yeah, let's make it a fun thing. Oh yeah, unicorns. It's so light and fun. It takes you down a notch. You're missing the whole point of that coming up. It's like the light brings it up, and then the opposite side's like, oh shit, they're gonna see it. Let's make it quirky. You know, let them have their fun, let them have their truth, but downplay it.
Yeah.
I guarantee you half the people wearing unicorn crap don't treat themselves like a unicorn. They don't walk in their sovereignty. That's Capricorn is heavy. That is some serious earth power. Like, you have to be a sovereign being to operate that way. You know, all your favorite artists, all your favorite architects, all the people you admire, they have to have that. And the funny thing is we can all have that. That's what our whole American thing is that you can have all that, but not really. You know, not if you're going to downplay yourself. You know, it's if you think you can't. You know, we're fed all these things. Like, I think it's funny that there's been this movement, this DIY movement, and all these people are doing crafts. They're canning things now. They're doing all these things that my grandma grew up doing, and it was normal. You know, back then it was, you did life. For all our technology, people don't know what to do with themselves because we don't know how to do life and to enjoy doing those things. I canned grapes with her. I didn't can them. We made grape juice and jam, and that was one of the most magical things I've ever done. You know, it's like, it's cooking. We're having fellowship in this ancestral home, and we got to eat some really good jam. Like, it was fun. So it's like, in a weird way, for all the quirk that those in control and pulling the strings want to insert, we're still connecting to that basic of like, man, this is how you do life, and it can be really cool. You know, go start a permaculture group, you know, go get involved in that kind of stuff, because when you see how easy it is, it's not so scary. Is it work? Yeah. Everything you want is going to be work. Maybe you should decide how you're going to spend your time. I'm not going to spend 8 hours of my life in the system, hating the system, trying to think I'm a rebel by hating it and not trying to feed myself. That seems stupid.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what you're talking about, especially with the unicorn, well, actually with both, is that we're fetishizing what used to be normalcy. It used to be something that was part of our cycle. What we've also told ourselves is that we need to not do things. We need to be successful means you don't ever need to do anything. You need to remain stationary at all times and push a button, or even better, if you're really advanced, have that button pushed for you automatically. Knowing what it is you're going to want. And that really does create that trance state. It's like hypnotizing the chicken, you know, once you've got it hypnotized, you can lay it on the ground and it's just gonna be there for a while. It's caught in the moment. And I think that's really astute, because I'd never even looked at the unicorn as Capricorn. That's right on. I've always, actually, I've always just had a bad connotation about it, because it usually involves a rainbow, and it usually involves, honestly, some kind of butt sex is usually what I see when I hear unicorn, because it's usually associated with something having to do with something like that. And it's just like, that's too bad. Meanwhile, why aren't there more horses? Like, we live in an advanced culture. I should be able to ride a horse into town. That should be an option, but it's not even something. I mean, no animal lover would dare bring a horse on the road. So it's not even like, well, you could if you wanted to. No, you can't. Our society doesn't even allow things like that, because again, we fetishize time, which means anything that takes a while, like making grape juice, which is funny because that's truly alchemy. Like you're actually doing alchemy with all these materials, but it's turned into labor. It's turned into something else. It's turned into a price point, a fetishized price point. And that's really what's taking away, you know, really all the magic that we have. It's all of these things are tied in, just like you said, to sovereignty. All these things really do relate exactly to our relationship that we have with ourselves. And if you look back in Roman culture, I'm really sick of people pretending that America invented slavery. Half of Rome ran on slavery, at least half. This is not, slavery isn't even an accident. It's not even a sin. Slavery, think about American colonial times. You would get over here because you wanted to start a new life, or you had no choice because of how bad it was where you were. You would come over here for a few months. You'd get cold as fuck in the winter. You'd lose your boots, and you'd knock on the door and say, "Hey, rich man, can I be your slave for 3 to 7 years?" And he would say yes. It would be a terrible relationship. You'd hate it the whole time, but you'd also be working towards something. You might have a great time. You might meet someone that's fantastic, and he's teaching you about how to shoe horses or how to do this or how to do that. But you're constantly working yourself out of slavery. Slavery's not gone. Slavery's not new. Slavery's not something invented by the white man. Slavery is the training wheels for sovereignty. This is a natural function of what it's like to learn how to stand up. A child, an infant, is a slave to crawling until he learns how to stand on his feet. That's a form of slavery. We need to stop shaming that and just understand, hey, look, some of us would prefer to crawl right now. When we can look at that, when the person can honestly look at themselves and go, yeah, I'm 40 years old and I'd prefer to crawl, nothing would be more of a motivating factor than that person having that conversation with themselves and saying, you know what, honestly, I just prefer to crawl for a while. When they have that conversation and they're fully sovereign and they understand that, they could even choose to stay in slavery. But I'm telling you, nothing's going to motivate them more than having that honest approach, instead of them pretending like, oh, the man forced it on me, or this or that. It's just, this is how we get to be sovereign. We have to work for it. It's not something easy. It's actually why we're here. It's the alchemical reason of life, to turn lead into gold, to turn slavery into sovereignty, to turn rust into stainless steel. So none of these are mistakes. None of these mean that we're broken. This is how we unfold. It's been 2 hours, so let's wrap it up. But I think the sound might be fixed, Rachel. See if you can turn off mute, and let me see if I'm hearing myself. Okay, great. I don't think I'm hearing myself. Wait, maybe I am. Wait. Okay. Do you have anything you want to say to kind of wrap up?
No, except thank you. That was really awesome. I think that's really good, and I think you have a lot of really good insight on that. I think the bit about slavery is really awesome, you know, because it's so true, and it does take just an honest, earnest look. And I think that's probably the last thing I would say is just, you know, be willing to dive in, to have those conversations, to explore your inner narratives, and really decide whose voice you're listening to, you know, so you know if you're in slavery or not, and you can make those conscious decisions.
Absolutely. Well, I've really enjoyed this. The insight. When you reached out to me, I was really excited because I was like, this is going to go places that I wouldn't have gone without it. This actually goes back to my point earlier, which I'm going to try and throw out really quick. We live in a culture now where we pretend like being in a vulnerable situation where we almost feel powerless is a bad thing that happens. And so much of what happens when we transmute ourselves, when we step on another stilt, when we find another archetype to empower ourselves with, is always brought about by our temporary loss of sovereignty, or the feeling that we've lost our sovereignty, because it gives us a chance to reclaim that sovereignty in that moment. And so many of us, because we're not taught this in school, We think that fear is a lack of power. When we feel fear, we feel what we think is a loosening or a losing of our power. When in actuality, what's happening is that fear is caused by adrenaline. It is caused by the empowerment of your chemicals. Your endocrine system is telling you, out of all the people in the world, I have the most confidence in you right now. So I'm going to fill your veins with adrenaline so you can get this shit done. So whatever it is that's scaring you right now, I am feeding you right now adrenaline. But you've been taught that it's fear. And when you think it's fear, you back away from it. You become a slave to the very liquid that was pouring through your veins to give you empowerment. It's so crucial that you find situations that are going to scare the shit out of you. And when you do that, take each moment. I'm not saying become a freakazoid here. I'm saying take those moments and look at them as precious, precious learning opportunities, because you cannot do that to yourself. You cannot put yourself into situations very easily where you do not have that same kind of overwhelming kind of fear. Yes, you can do that sometimes. I joined the Navy. To me, boot camp was an amazing experience for me, because just for those 8 weeks, I was like, holy shit, what did I do to myself? You can do those things to you, but when they happen to you, it's so much more powerful, because you're completely helpless to what happened to you. And that is so much more transmutative power, because you end up being charged from that for the rest of your life. The rest of your life, you'll remember, God, do you remember when I climbed the high dive? And I was so scared. I did not want to, but I wanted to crawl back down. I wanted to, like, no, I don't want to get off the high. I'm not jumping off the high dive. I'm not. And everyone was telling you to jump. And it's just, I wish that I could tell you guys right now that I jumped. I have jumped off a high dive, but there was once that I didn't. And I was so scared. That adrenaline had flown through me. But I thought, oh God, I'm not worthy of this power. Like, I think that's really what was happening, is that I felt like I wasn't worthy of this power. And I felt like a little bitch. I crawled down those steps from the high dive. And for like years, I was wrecked. Luckily, I think a few weeks later, I did finally go off the high dive. But my point is that we have those opportunities, and they're so rare. And it's important that even when we fail, like me, I'm telling you about it now. I'm telling you about it right now, which means I'm now gaining prana. I just unlocked prana from when I was 9 years old right now, thanks to Rachel, because I just brought this up. And I didn't see that coming. So all these are transmutative. Even our quote-unquote failures are opportunities for us to gain sovereignty, to gain our auric field, to become more powerful. So thank you for watching. Rachel, if you want to say goodbye, please do.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
I hate to turn this into, if you guys want to buy my book, please consider it. I don't want to turn this into an ad, Rachel, but man, if people were buying my book, it would be awesome. You'll see links down there in the description. But if not, if you don't have money, that's cool. You could read my free column. Subscribe, hit like. Thank you so much, Rachel, for this talk. This has been amazing. And we'll see you guys next time. I'm going to hit stop record now.